Good evening, Chairman Sir, fellow panelists, and respected audience. Thank you, Vicky, for giving me this opportunity. I'll take about 10 minutes to just trigger some thought processes amongst the audience. In a session like this, you can't really get into the details, but the intent is really to trigger some thought process, trigger some points for reflection. And where I come from is I have about 25 years experience in the industry, and close to about 12 to 13 years has been with the agribusiness industries in different companies. So whatever I speak would be from that particular experience, and that's the context in which I'm coming. The topic that was given was developing human resources for food and agribusiness sector, technical and managerial. I probably would very confidently take a bet that the moment you see that a corporate speaker has come, and if this is the topic, I am likely to focus on managers. But to me, when we are looking at human resource, it's much, much wider. There are, in my view, 6 broad categories of human resources that we need to sort of look at when we are talking of this particular sector. Interestingly, and to me, probably the most critical human resource in this entire thing is the farmer. Do we really look at farmer as a human resource or as somebody who is just producing what is required to produce in the field? I think time has come for us to start from that particular basic level. And I'll give you a very simple example of what we do in ITC. Because we look at the farming community as a resource, and it's a huge community, I'll just give you one example in terms of how do we look at it. You can't reach out to thousands and thousands of farmers on your own. And that's where our entire concept of the sanchalaks, who are like the influence farmers or the lead farmers. The moment you look at that entire chain as a human resource, then these sanchalaks become my trainer. And my responsibility as a corporate then becomes to train the trainers. And that's how we look at in terms of equipping the farmers and the lead farmers. A second perspective on the farming community. Very often we think that let's do some agri extension and it is end of it. Even a farmer requires some basic inputs on basic aspects of management. It could be people management given today labor shortage, basic management of finance, basic management of storage, etc. That's one approach that we need to look at, and that's one very critical segment. A second critical segment in my view, and which to a certain extent also addresses some of the things that were being discussed since yesterday on a lot of people not wanting to continue with the farming community. There is a new sector which is emerging, and which is a very, very important sector, and that is the services sector related to this entire value chain. What I mean by services sector is it could be basic warehousing, it could be basic commodity exchanges, transporters, cold storages, you name it. And each one of them has a very, very critical role. Traditionally, what has happened is, whoever it's there, lets me get a pair of hands and legs and put them into this particular sector or into this particular sub-segment of this entire value chain. Now, we spoke of people who are not wanting to do farming, and the other extreme tended to be, they probably go to the urban towns, etc., to take up security jobs or etc. Can we, in collaboration with corporates, other sectors, look at equipping them, preparing them to take up jobs in these intermediary sectors? And that is where I think there's a tremendous potential, especially when you're talking of skill development by NSDC, etc. That's one segment that we could look at. A third segment, which we really need to look at, is the whole segment of entrepreneurs, these small and medium segment people. There I see again a very powerful role for corporates. If only each corporate like us could pick up 2 or 3 entrepreneurs and mentor them in terms of how should they be running the business, I think we would be doing a tremendous value add for that particular segment. Second aspect as far as this segment is concerned is you work with a lot of people, like we work with a lot of transporters, logistics, but typical mindset tends to be, I have outsourced it, I have contracted. So it becomes a very, very commercial contract. But I think in the interest of the whole system, if we shift gears and make our mindset as a partner mindset, then we are able to transfer a lot of our best practices, good practices, even to those companies, and then the entire industry as an aggregate benefits. So that's a third category and segment that we could look at. A fourth category, and I think which is where I'll probably come now, is really, when we are talking of agri-processing, it's the skilled resources. Skilled resources who need to work in the plant and machinery, where the fundamental source of these resources could be the ITIs and the polytechnics, auto sector, construction sector, manufacturing sector. All of them are engaging with these institutes to ensure that they get fairly ready-made products for their particular industries. I think that's another area where I have not seen much of work being done by companies in the agribusiness sector to work with these institutes, because traditionally we have not considered them as part of our human resource value chain. Last two segments, of course, the students. I will not dwell too much into that particular aspect, but I think the biggest challenge that corporate is, that is what corporate is increasingly looking at. And a very simple thing when I look at pedagogy, to give you an example, I think I would be extremely happy if I were to take a business line of today, look at a news item which probably says that the palm oil prices are so today, and look at every other news item in business line and see how that news item is linking to palm oil. I'm not sure how many of us tend to do that, and that's what corporate is looking at. I know it sounds a little complicated, but that's the reality. If I were to put it very, very simplistic terms, what we look at are predominantly 5 Qs, what I call. I think the most fundamental Q is intelligence quotient. I think that is something which starts at a very, very basic level. A second Q that we look at is what we call as technical quotient or the functional quotient, which is essentially how much do you know of that particular subject. The third one that we look at is what we call as motivation quotient. Do you have fire in the belly? Do you have passion? Fourth is basically what we call as learning quotient. Are you willing to learn from mistakes, from experiences? Do you have that hunger for learning? And last Q that we really look at is the people quotient, which is your ability to manage yourself and your ability to manage people. The last segment, I think a very, very important segment, is faculty. I think there is a tremendous need for academic institutes and faculty to invest in themselves. What happens today is, in the name of creating a connect with the industry, we invite people from the industry and take sessions. I will go to probably a college and take a session for an hour and a half, but you need somebody there to again build upon that, link it further. Again, I'll just give one suggestion for this. Can we look at a model where the academic institutions can just make one investment? They'll say, okay, this faculty we are releasing for 1 year, that faculty will work in the corporate for 1 year, understand the entire thing, and then go back to the institute. And I have not spoken to my boss, but I'm sure that we in agribusiness division, we could probably look at about 2 such people every year. And I think that is very, very critical as far as faculty development is concerned. Last point, more in terms of the agri sector, I think we need to create pride amongst people who are working in this particular industry. Very, very important. There's tremendous need for creating branding. We need to have role models from this particular sector who can connect out with the students and the other community. And in that context, a thought that came to my mind yesterday, you have a Retail Association of India. You have the Hotel Association, you have HR Association. If we are treating agriculture as a specialism, is there really an association where you really look at agriculture as a specialism? Today you have bodies within industry bodies like CI, FICCI, ASSOCHAM. An example that comes to me in terms of what probably could be looked at is something like the Retailers Association of India, which purely looks at that particular sector. Or like the National HRD network, which purely looks at human resource issues. Probably time for us to look at something similar for this industry. Thank you.
An extremely rewarding